Hello there, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of TA with MK. My name is McKay, and in today's episode, we're just going to do a quick market update, kind of a follow-up on an idea that I brought up in last week's videos. We were talking about a potential altcoin season, kind of what would need to happen or what could potentially happen for that to begin to play out. So I just kind of wanted to follow up and give an update, of course, on that. And of course, if somewhere around the corner there is a potential altcoin season on the horizon, well, then it seems appropriate that we talk about or give a sneak peek to my number 3 coin for my series that I started recently of my top 10 coins that I personally think are good coins to accumulate during this bear market as we transition into the next bull market. Now, keep in mind, I will leave links in the description to the first 2 coins that I've done so far in the series. Now, they're not ranked in any particular order, but the first video that I did, which was 1 of 10, was Verasity, or VRA, and the second one that I did more recently was the Oasis network, or better known as Rose. So, of course, you'll want to watch the entire video because at the end of the video, I will reveal a sneak peek to my 3rd coin, which means that my upcoming video in the next day or 2 will be a full-length video on the project that we talk about in today's video. Now, with all that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and dive into today's content. And as always, if you guys are enjoying the videos that I put out, do me a huge favor and please remember to like and subscribe, and let's go. It's TA with MK. It's TA with MK. Okay, so the first chart that we're going to start out with is the Bitcoin dominance chart. Now, the reason we're starting out with this chart is I've mentioned this in a few of my recent videos, but really the whole idea of an altcoin season in my mind begins with this chart. Now, there's a lot more to it than this, and I will leave a link in the description to a couple of videos that I've put out that are all about Bitcoin dominance. For those of you that are new to this chart, maybe don't understand exactly what it means, what it represents. In a nutshell, generally, if this is going up, that's bad for altcoins, and generally when it's going down, that's good. However, there's a lot more to it than that, and it's not always that simple. So I would watch those videos in the description if this is a new concept to you, just so you can kind of understand the nuances and exactly how this chart works. That being said, just to kind of quickly update you on what we've been watching on this chart, and it's just really this upper blue zone of resistance that we're currently at. What it represents is in the past, you know, Bitcoin dominance, at least dating back to this really, really big, if you look back up here, clear back in 2021 May, you had Bitcoin dominance sitting up here at about 63%, and it went on this crazy epic, what we call in crypto an altcoin season, found support kind of on this lower blue zone, which is where it's bounced on several occasions, and each time it's bounced there, for the most part, it's eventually worked its way back up to the top of this blue zone, which is up around 48.5%, the bottom side's down around 40% or 39.5%, and more or less, anytime it's been trending this direction to the top side of the range, that's been bad for altcoins, or you've either seen altcoins bleed, or at the very least, you've seen Bitcoin outperform the altcoins. Anytime it's went to this direction, this has kind of been our little mini altcoin seasons. Obviously not as epic as this one up here, where you went from 70% on the dominance, or 63.5% or 64% on the dominance, all the way down over just a few months. But you had basically, Bitcoin season, altcoin season, Bitcoin season, which is what we're currently experiencing. So basically what I'm watching for based on this chart is a rejection, because anytime we get rejected here, like I said before, there's opportunities for altcoins to see bigger gains than Bitcoin, essentially. So in the last video, I talked about a couple of ideas. I did mention that we were at the same, blue zone of resistance that in the past, at least on, the last 3 occasions, they've represented major rejections where Bitcoin dominance spent the next few months trending down back to the lower blue zone. Altcoin season, altcoin season, altcoin season. Essentially, doesn't mean they were all the same as each other. Some were better than others. And a lot of that, if it's happening in a bear market like, this most recent one, it didn't necessarily mean altcoins did what they did during the bull run, of course, but they saw, as a whole, very good gains. So again, what I've been watching for is one of 2 things to happen, and in neither case is fine with me. I'm just waiting for Bitcoin dominance in this case to give me the clues as to what, if and when I should, transition into altcoins. And based on a possibility of a breakout, you know, in that case, that means Bitcoin's going to still be, we're still going to be in what's called the Bitcoin season, which I'll explain in a minute in the chart what that could look like. In my mind, which I mentioned in the last video, it would be Bitcoin breaking 30K, going on a run for somewhere between 32, possibly as high as 38K. If something like that happens, you're going to see this breakout. It's going to be Bitcoin season, obviously, and you can even look for measured moves. I don't use things like this on Bitcoin dominance, but essentially if you wanted to, you could say, hey, this is a giant double bottom, or a W pattern as some people call it, and if this were to break out, you know, and Bitcoin were to start going on some crazy rally, you know, maybe we see over time, we're talking maybe over the next year or something, maybe Bitcoin dominance finds its way clear back up to this level that was support, resistance, you know, that is the measured move, which is clear up around 57%. And if this were to happen, it basically just means we'd be in a giant, you know, Bitcoin season, something similar to what happened back here between 2017 and 2018 when you had kind of a similar pattern. Now, granted, this was a higher low, not a double bottom, but very similar pattern. You know, there was a measured move for the same pattern. You could take that, put it up here. Look, these things, you can't make them up sometimes. Basically hit that measured move before, you know, consolidating and then making another push to the upside. Now, this is just my opinion, but because altcoins have just grown so much and continue to grow and become a bigger part of this market, I don't expect, even if we see upside, for us to do something similar. I mean, it doesn't mean it can happen, but I don't expect us to see Bitcoin dominance, honestly, ever again back up to 72%, which is where we were just as recent as August of 2019, where it found resistance. And again, right before the big bull run, or altcoin season, I mean, we were there at that same resistance in late December 2020, early January 2021, and that was clear up around 73%. I personally don't see us ever reaching that again, but if we were to break out, the more realistic target for me would just be back up here, possibly in the short term, this resistance here. About 53%. That's not quite the measured move, but it would make sense. It also has some confluence with the moving averages here on the weekly. You have this 200, the blue one is what we call the 200 EMA, and then you also have the 200 SMA. And, you know, you can kind of see if we draw this line across that right now, that's where the EMA sits. Over the next month or two, you know, you might see this one trend down a little bit as well. And, you know, it would make sense at some point for Bitcoin dominance to test those as resistance. Would they get rejected there? You know, time would tell. Would all depend on kind of what Bitcoin was doing at that point. But that's kind of scenario A, that, hey, just because we're at this level of resistance that we've talked about doesn't mean that this time has to be the same. In fact, because we might be the different part of this, you know, overall cycle, or maybe the bear market cycle, as we transition into the next bull market, this could be the point where Bitcoin kind of goes on its own little rally to the upside, which we'll talk about what that might look like on its chart in just a moment. And then maybe, you know, altcoins later, you know, this late end of the year, beginning of next year, 2024, kind of have their own run. Now, scenario number two, while in the short term would be better because it would mean that this potential altcoin season could happen sooner rather than later, I don't think it's actually as bullish as the first scenario. And the reason I say that is if Bitcoin can go on a rally, break 30K, break 32K, you know, and its dominance trends up here, it also just means that the ceiling gets higher, and the starting point of the potential altcoin season goes up higher, and it means it has more room for it to be a lot more epic altcoin season, if that makes sense. Because if we just start trending down here right now, you know, there's a very good chance that it's just a short term, 1 month, 2 month tops, before possibly some more, you know, capitulation in the coming months or the end of the year or something, right? Whereas if Bitcoin can break above with some healthy candles over 30K, 32K, 35K, some of these numbers we'll talk about in just a minute, and then ultimately consolidate towards the end of this year, maybe even in the next month or two, honestly. At that point, if this gets rejected kind of at this area that I'm talking about, you might see a lot bigger altcoin season and a lot more potential gains. Either way, both scenarios are definitely bullish for altcoins. One's just more bullish in the short term, one's more bullish, you know, later, a few months, maybe the end of the year. But as we look at the Bitcoin chart, I just want to go over a couple of things briefly as far as this is concerned. Now, this is also the weekly chart, just because I figured it was easier to tie in the weekly with the weekly, as far as we were on the weekly with the dominance, and so this is the weekly on Bitcoin. And really what I'm looking for this kind of rally to continue is for us to, one, hold this 200 moving average. This is the yellow one. This is the one that I think is more relevant usually. I trade with both, but this one's the one that I think more traders pay attention to. It's a 200 SMA. And you can kind of see that while it broke above it back here in August of 2022, so last year, it ultimately got rejected at the 200 EMA, which is the other one that I track. And then it came back down and found resistance on the 200 SMA, and then of course, you know, we eventually saw another giant capitulation down to what is our, you know, bear market lows so far, around 15,500. Well, if you fast forward to kind of more recently, we retested it as resistance here. You know, then we came back down, and this weekly candle that we just had 2 weeks ago, which was the kind of the second week in March, you can see two things happened here that were both bullish. Number one, it broke above the 200 SMA. Let me see if I can zoom in here a little bit and you can see a little better. So that's this yellow one. It broke above that, and number two, it not only broke above it, but here on the Binance chart, which is the, you know, the most used exchange, there was a ton of volume. You could actually look back and see, you know, the most recent candle that was even close to that was the capitulation candle that we just talked about, that saw Bitcoin drop from 21,000 all the way down to under 16,000, right? You also had a candle back here that was pretty large, but this is the biggest candle, at least on Binance's chart, really, honestly, ever, from what it looks like to me at least. This is the largest candle, you know, that we've ever seen on the Binance chart, which to me is coupled with the fact that it happened while breaking above that moving average is very, very bullish. Now, in tomorrow's video, we'll talk a little bit more about the daily chart and some of the lower time frames as far as what I feel like we need to stay above on those time frames to remain bullish. But as far as the weekly chart goes, we really just need to hold that level, which is basically sitting right around, as of right now, 25,500. In fact, if you look over here on the right, it shows in yellow where the 200 SMA is on the weekly, and it's at 25,543. So clearly, as the time goes on, that is going to continue to come up. But as of right now, if Bitcoin were to see some sort of a pullback, you know, over the next week or two, which is not something that I necessarily think is going to happen, I actually think quite the opposite, but if it were to happen, or when it happens at some point, the inevitable retest of that moving average, we just want to see that hold, because if we lose that, you know, then we might see a retest of the lows at some point, or at least close to. You know, anything back around 17 to 18,000 would be fair game. So if you want to remain bullish, at least for this year, we want to see that 200 SMA and basically the 25 to 26K level hold as support. And then on top of that, what we want to see for the really big altcoin season that I talked about, which was kind of scenario A from the last page, we would love to see Bitcoin break above. Now, let me kind of just draw this level on the chart real quick, put a horizontal line. You can kind of see here that right where we're at least from a weekly perspective, let me change this to the color blue, which is normally what I use for weekly. You can see that back here in 2021, after we broke above basically 29,000, that became support before a giant push higher. We retested that level on several occasions between May of 2021 and, you know, midsummer in July, before ultimately pushing onwards and upwards to our new all-time high. And it even acted as support briefly as recent as 2022 in May, before we, you know, now it's been above us and is currently our resistance. If we can break above on a weekly time frame, so basically as of this coming Sunday, because that's when the weekly chart closes. In fact, if you look over here on the right, it says it closes in 4 days. If we break above and can turn that into support, at that point we have some pretty good targets that we could expect to see over the next, you know, month or two, or maybe even 3. We're talking targets like, in fact, let's just mark them out real quick. So the most immediate target above, should we break out, would basically be 32K. It's actually on a weekly candle close at least closer to like 32.5. But, you know, anything above 32K or right around 32K to me would kind of be the first target. And we want to revisit it after that, because I also have targets over the coming months, should we continue to be bullish, of 35K and ultimately approximately 37 to 38K. And at that point, you know, of course, we'd have to just see kind of how the markets are reacting if this does happen. But the point being is, if we can flip 29K, at that point, you know, we can expect Bitcoin season to continue, and then at that point we would just be looking for whenever it gets rejected, whether that's 32.5 or 7K, and then at that point, you know, altcoin season could begin should Bitcoin be able to, you know, basically hold whatever level it breaks above, whether that's 32.5 or 37, whatever it is. If it can break above it and consolidate for a bit, even a small retrace, you know, something like this where it ultimately breaks up and then kind of trends back to retest 29K on the weekly chart, that's going to be nothing but bullish. And in fact, this move here would probably represent altcoin season. And now, my friends, it's time for the sneak peek to our number 3 of 10 top coins that I'm looking to accumulate or buy during the, you know, the rest of this bear market. And today's coin is going to be the ticker UFO. It's actually UFOGAMING. It's a gaming token. And it's just a coin that I traded a few different times during the last bull market. It saw some really good gains. In fact, it was one of the better coins that I traded. The very best coin that I traded is actually also one of my top 10. I'll bring that up in a later video. But this one's going to be the one for this particular video. In the next day or two, I'll put out a full-length video about this coin, kind of going over the tokenomics, some of the news related to this coin, upcoming, you know, developments to the project, and so on. But I just wanted to kind of give you the quick sneak peek. And I wanted to mention that I think that this coin has potential to at least go back to what its all-time high was the last, you know, bull market. And as of right now, how far down are we from that price, which was clear up here at 4 zeros and 32. If we go down to where the current price is right now, we are currently sitting at about 95, almost 96% down. So again, that fits our criteria for a coin that has been absolutely wrecked, but that I think has potential to return to its glory days. Now, it even had a rally actually just back here in late summer of 2022, so last year. And, you know, if it were to even go just back up to that price, you know, you're looking at potentially gains of around 350%. So that's like a 3.5x. And if it were to reach, you know, its all-time high, which was again during the last bull market, you're looking at something like a 22, almost 2300% gain. So a 23x potential. Again, I will dive deeper into this coin in a coming video, so be looking for that. But I just wanted to put it on your radar as, you know, being my number 3 out of my top 10 coins that I personally am looking to accumulate. I appreciate you guys for sticking around to the end of the video. I just wanted to mention that we've recently hit 500, or a little over 500 subscribers on the channel. That was kind of my first big milestone as a YouTuber. So I just wanted to give a shout out to each and every one of you that have subscribed so far. I really, truly do appreciate it. And of course, as always, if you ever want to leave a comment because you have a question or just want to say hi, I love to hear from you guys, and I do my best to reply back to those comments. And for those of you that haven't subscribed yet, if you wouldn't mind doing me a huge favor on your way out, remember to like and subscribe. We'll catch you in the next one. It's TAMECODES.